It sounds like that egg.
Episode
Flat out
96.
fever.
96. Episode 96 coming to you on a Sunday near you. No, actually, yeah, we are going live on a Sunday. We normally don't do these podcasts on a Sunday unless we have a guest.
That's right.
Yeah. Seriously, like the only times that we do this on a Sunday is when we have somebody to talk to.
It's God's day.
Yes.
Yeah.
But here we are. It is Sunday.
This is my God.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh, hey, pass me that paper. The paper.
You want this one?
Yeah, cheers.
like
So
you
yeah,
brought
cheers,
I
guys.
feel like you brought this one for yourself.
Well, whatever, man. Too late now. Yo,
Too late.
Cheers.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, cheers.
Yeah, cheers, guys.
And cheers, everybody at home. Thanks for tuning in on your busy Sunday. I'm sure everybody has this busy Sunday, right? That's the thing with Sundays now.
Well, it's God's day, so.
So yeah,
praying.
after mass, you came here and you listened to us, and we got a special treat for all of y'all today. We have none other than friend of the podcast, F1 statistician extraordinaire,
Moderator for
Moderator for
subreddit.
Formula One subreddit.
yeah, and I'm sure that on top of all of that, he somehow has enough time to squeeze in having a life and being a successful researcher.
Australian?
Well, and Australian.
Successful Australia.
Practices bouncing and
Andrew Phillips.
Andrew Phillips.
Andrew Phillips.
Dr. Andrew Phillips.
Dr. Phillips.
Where's your respect?
Yeah. So we talked to Dr. Phillips early last year. Early-ish last year. And it was what a great conversation.
Episode
that we had with him.
53.
Is that what it was?
Since you like the episode numbers. Yeah, it was number 53.
Cool. Yeah.
So about a year ago.
And it was a great conversation. Lots to talk about, and we expect no less this time around. For the people that found this stream,
No pressure,
Yeah.
Dr. Phillips.
yeah. For the people that found this stream and
Just a
are
friendly chat.
watching live right now, feel free to go on the chat. We have the chat open, and if you want to ask some questions, here we will ask them for you. Other than that, like what else can we say? Oh, so his blog recently is called the F1Metrics blog. That's how that's
F1Metrics.blogspot.com.
Yeah, even if you don't, if you're an F1 fan and if you don't frequent Reddit, you would have still probably stumbled upon his blog through the internet in general because, especially recently, his stuff, his most recent analysis that we're really going to talk to him about a lot is the model basis. So he has this model where he compares how each driver did throughout the season, and as far as we can tell, and he even points it out, the other models that are out there that the media at large likes to use are not as comprehensive as his, because he's taken into consideration situations when, like, for example, the driver cannot finish the race because of DNFs that were out of his control, etc., etc. So he does a very thorough analysis, and he did that this year, and he came up with basically saying that Alonso was, if everybody had the same car, he basically said Alonso would have won this year. And Alonso tweeted that, basically saying,
yeah, throw up that tweet because it's a nice shout out to Dr. Phillips here.
Yeah. It's so this is Fernando Alonso saying,
he said, "I always loved my maths at school." Linking to the end of year review at F1Metrics.
Yeah.
And Dr. Phillips has from last year, the year before, as well as a bunch of other charts. He did one recently too, just before the end of the season, that compared a bunch of the up and coming F1 feeder series drivers. So a bunch of the F2, GP2, GP3 drivers who are coming up, Indy drivers, I think, as well.
There's a little back and forth with Carlos Sainz and Fernando here. That's so cute.
Yeah. The two Spanish boys. All around great guy. Always ready. If you are on Reddit, you'll find that It's a pretty vibrant F1 community that they have built. Like it's gone it's gotten to huge numbers now. You can always find some great insight. And
interesting there quickly, the back and forth with Sainz and Alonso there.
Yeah,
Sainz was the second rated driver on Andrew Phillips' chart.
Who did a very good job.
Tied for second place, but yeah, second place driver.
But yeah, what was I saying? Fuck. Anyway, Andrew Phillips. What else can we say? He's if you're on Reddit, like he'll, other than him being a moderator for the whole F1 subreddit, he also is a frequent contributor in the comment sections. He's always there with the facts. People know that like you go to him and like whatever. His Reddit username is what the fat. Whatever what the fat says usually like is you're pretty
pay
bang on.
attention.
Yeah, yeah, buddy. So I guess I don't know. Like, do we have anything else to say?
I think that's about it. Yeah, if you want to go back and check out the previous interview, we basically went over what we're gonna do today. We went over the previous year's data and the preseason analysis.
Yeah, because
he gave us.
That was back then when he had just released the preseason.
Yeah, the preseason analysis. Yeah.
Which,
That's right.
by the way, held pretty well throughout the year.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those observations that he got there from those testing labs, for some reason, dictated some of what was going to happen. It's incredible. It's incredible. Yeah. And that's what, well, I mean, people do tend to say that in the world of F1, like, oh, by Spain, you get an idea of how the year is going to go. Mm-hmm. But still, on a sport that I guess on that end is like kind of predictable.
Yeah.
It still was such an unpredictable year. So we gotta talk to him about the nuances of that as well. And I think without further ado, if Mike, you can get going to establish a direct line to Dr. Phillips.
We're gonna call him through Skype here.
Yeah.
So excuse us for 1 second while it rings through the internet. And here we go.
Hey guys.
Hey, how's it going?
Dr. Phillips!
Good afternoon. Good morning.
How are you doing?
I guess, yeah, it's good morning
Good
to you,
morning
right?
for you, right?
Yeah, morning here. In
Good night, mate.
Don't insult the man. Jesus, Danny.
Sorry.
So you were talking to us from the future, essentially.
Yep.
Because it is Monday there right now. How's the? I mean, because I did a quick search.
It's about 8 a.m.
Yeah,
7 a.m. there.
And at 7 a.m., I can guarantee you. I know that you did this. Like you're in Australia right now. I don't know your exact reasons, but I can tell you right now that you made a good decision because right now in Boston is -6.
Yeah.
It looks bright and sunny where you are.
Weather-wise, definitely better here, and I'm a little bit closer to the 2017 season.
Yeah, that's true. That's
Very
true.
true.
Are you gonna be hanging around there for the next 76 days?
Sadly, no.
When was the last Australian Grand Prix that you went to?
99, I think.
Oh yeah.
Oh wow.
That's a crazy one.
It's been a while.
No doubt. So I guess you'll be going back to Boston at some point, but until then, you're just enjoying the nice weather. Looking forward to 2017.
Very much. Yeah, I'd be very keen to catch a race this year. I think it's going to be crazy.
Yeah, I'm excited. I can't wait to see these cars. The unveils are coming in the next 5-6 weeks. We're gonna see them all on the test track.
So, I guess there's no need to. We just did a quick introduction about your work with F1Metrics. The infamous tweet from Alonso. How did that How did you find that? That was pretty cool.
It definitely boosted the views of the page.
I can't imagine how was that spike from down here to the thousands.
Yeah, it pretty much quadrupled the views of that post.
Wow.
That's beautiful.
Fantastic.
That's amazing.
Oh, it deserves it anyway.
Great insight. And we were just saying how the last time we talked to you was after the preseason testing, and we went through your preseason analysis and how, by and large, it pretty much held throughout the year. In terms of the teams, especially, obviously, but I guess we sort of, all of us in the back of our minds, we knew that it was gonna end up being Mercedes at the top, and the order to follow.
Perhaps not.
Yeah.
Fourth India.
That's true.
Yeah, Force India definitely. Well, I'd say they started the season close to how they looked in testing, but then they really just improved massively across the year.
Now, yeah, you made that
Yeah.
you made that point during your now the 2016 form analysis, how they were basically one of the best performing cars in the year, and that to me was almost shocking because in terms of bringing tons of parts to every weekend, they weren't really known for that. They didn't do a ton of that. They mostly just kept quiet, kept the design kind of similar to last year, and just I guess worked on fine tuning the details.
The nostrils, that was the only real.
But that was from last year.
The only headline upgrade that they had, right?
But that was from last year. But that's from the year before.
That's what I'm saying. That's like the last really
Yeah.
headline upgrade that they had.
What do you make of it?
Well, I think it's a couple of things. One is they have a lot of suppliers.
Yeah.
So for one thing, obviously the alliance with Mercedes helps. They use other people's wind tunnels. They get parts from a lot of other teams in a way similar to Haas. The other thing, which I was reading recently, is apparently they have a very specific design philosophy in which they don't even let their designers work on certain areas of the car. They say, unless there's, some predicted gain larger than a threshold, then just don't even waste your time on that area of the car. So they only work in areas where there's potential high gain in terms of aerodynamics.
Which must be, I mean, you as a statistics guy that is interested in that field, like how do you, the models that they might use to like figure out even if one way of design versus another is going to yield that much must be, I mean, you're spending all night figuring that out even.
Yeah, it would be a very complicated optimization problem. For sure.
Yeah, it's got to be arbitrary in itself, just figuring out what to work on.
But hey, it's worked for them, so clearly they're onto something.
Yeah.
Is that your biggest, I guess, like shock this year, or biggest surprise to see how they kept going and kept improving despite the limited resources?
I would say so, yeah. Renault, I think, were also a bit of a surprise in just how bad they were.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I kind of went in with low expectations for them, but then from testing times, I thought they'd be a little bit more competitive, and then they were just never there. They were always hanging around the back.
And that was something that really shocked everyone because they came into the year saying that they were super committed to F1, but then not backing that up on track. But at the same time, you could say
they came into the program for this year though late.
Yeah,
and they said this year was kind of a throwaway year. They want to balance the behind the scenes, the organization, the office work, all that stuff before they're gonna perform on track. But
yeah, as you say, I think it makes perfect sense for them to focus on 2017. 2016 was always going to be kind of a lost year for them. It was just a question of how bad.
Right. For looking at your data though, so this is probably a little bit unorthodox. I don't want to go too deep just off the top here, but just because you mentioned the Renault, if you add the two drivers' performance numbers for the year, right?
The PPRs.
I just saw your eyebrows raise. If you add them though, you can kind of get an idea of the team performance, and Renault comes out second last. They come out right at the bottom. 8.39.
Yeah,
which is
right
not too far below
just ahead of
Alonso on his own.
Yeah, basically. So Sauber, they were just ahead of, and I couldn't get a rating on Manor given their drivers were not connected.
Right, yeah.
So probably they were the third last. Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate.
And so a crazy thing just happened. Actually, I don't know, like if you guys read about it, but Manor again in administration.
Yes. Well, they're dead basically.
What's so basically?
It's looking like they're not going to race this year.
Yeah, but it's looking final now. Now about that Manor push, because I think obviously losing that, like you pointed out on your blog too, like losing that 10th place to Sauber, disaster. Total disaster, because when they were fishing for investors, at one point it was even said that Ron Dennis and a team led by Graham Loudon were looking into maybe, but obviously they would have been counting on the whole transportation agreements that would have come with the 10th place, and the prize money 100%.
Yeah.
So now that that's all gone, poor them. Like I would actually really like to see Manor come back next year, but 2 years in 2 years in administration.
Yeah, don't forget
starting the year in administration.
We started talking about last week, and I wanted to expand on this week, but the deal fell through. Was that there was an Asian conglomerate of businesses that were going to take over the Manor team and reform it into some sort of an Asian team. That fell through, and yeah, it's just dead. That's it.
It's sad to see because you want to see more teams in F1.
Don't forget for this season in 2015, at the end of 2015, going into the 2016 season, they were given by the FOM a special some sort of dispensation that they were allowed to use the old chassis, and with the new nose regulations, they put in some sort of spacer piece there to conform with that. And they were using an old engine that they weren't getting any support for, aside from Verline being a Mercedes driver. Yeah. They're basically on strings the whole year. They had less than 200 employees, where Mercedes has 1,300. So yeah, you have to put an asterisk beside their name. And Haryanto's backers pulled out halfway through the season.
Well, I mean,
yeah, they did.
Who could blame him?
Exactly. Yeah.
But so what do you see the Manor situation going? Like, are they salvageable? Like, is that a team? Because they kind of did.
Sadly, I think they're not, because it's not like last time where they were able to turn up with sort of a year-old car and still have something that was roughly legal. Like they really do need to build a car from scratch for this year, and if they, by all accounts, they haven't made much progress there because the team's probably going under. So to design a whole new car before Australia. Yeah. And then to get it anywhere near 107% when you're going into a totally new formula. And then even to live on, I mean, it's kind of inevitable that this will happen, right? We've got a prize fund structure that only really supports 10 teams.
Yeah.
So whoever's in 11th is always going to be under the hammer. If it's not Manor, it'll be Sauber. If it's not Sauber, it'll be Haas.
Well, that's it's like that for a reason. You also don't want to give every single or at least that's the motivation behind that. You don't want to give every single team, regardless of whether they come in for one race or whatever, a piece of the pie, because some people say that wouldn't encourage competition.
Right.
That aside, though, very sad. It would be very sad to lose Manor, because we had a couple of years where there were only 10 teams, and just having that extra team, like that extra bit of traffic going around, it helps. Like it gives people opportunities to make maneuvers. It is good for the sport to have more teams in general. Like even if they're just barely scraping the 107%.
I agree. I mean, when I started watching, it was usually closer to 30 cars. The 26 was sort of the standard in the early 90s.
Jesus.
It felt like a busier, more colorful, more vibrant grid.
Absolutely.
Of course, by the end of the race, many of those cars were not running because of the reliability at the time. But at least early in the race, the grid looked packed.
There still is a chance for Manor for 2018 to pull through. Somebody throughout this next year could come through with the money, build the team up, and say, like, look, now we have another year and a half. Let's build a car that we can compete in 2018 with.
Absolutely.
It's still possible. Like there were, up until a few days ago, and 3 or 4 days ago, there was a group of people who were about to drop the money and take control of it. They backed out in the last minute, but hey,
that'll be a story that, I mean, I hope it's not as sad as it seems, but maybe not this year. Maybe by 2018 they'll figure it out and we'll be able to rescue the teams and facilities, because the facilities, regardless of what they
that's
do,
what I'm saying. That's
the
already,
big computers are still going to be there.
That stuff is already set
their
up.
Their autoclave is going to be there. Whatever their composites department, as rudimentary as it might be, is still going to exist somewhere physically in the UK. So hopefully somebody will come in with some money and rescue them, pull them out of the grave. Going back to the first thing that we're here for, really, the 2016 model-based driver rankings. I just wanted to go, if we can go like quickly one by one and talk about how you saw the season in this frame rate of, like, we were discussing about talking about inter-team rivalries, some battles, significant stuff that happened throughout the year. I think that despite how predictable-ish it was in the sense that you knew that a Mercedes was going to win most of the time, it was still an incredibly unpredictable season, an incredibly surprising season, and we had some great stories.
I love that even though the 3 Manor drivers have the asterisk beside their name because the mix-up, some of them didn't complete a bunch of races, that Gutierrez is still by far, by a measurable amount, the lowest ranked driver. Gutierrez, 2.53 points per race.
Yeah, that's rough. I mean,
the moving blue flag himself.
He had some bad luck, but should he be in Formula One? Probably not.
This is what we've been saying, man. This is what we've been saying. And obviously, like, my arguments or arguments here are usually like who can scream the loudest. But
Carlos Slim clearly has too much money. He has too much money.
But no, it absolutely based on nothing like the kind of facts that you put behind putting Esteban Gutierrez in 23 here. You just know, like, you look at the guy and there's no, like, you don't get any passion from seeing him drive. You just, like, you watch him on a Grand Prix weekend, and more often than not, you're annoyed when he comes on the screen. Like, you know, no, seriously.
Yeah, kind of ruins your day for a bit.
Yeah.
Guy that shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
Like, it should actually be, if F1 wants people, especially like new fans and people that the kind of stuff that they should be doing, they should be trying to get the numbers up in terms of audience, and especially new audience. If they want to be taken seriously by any new viewer, they can't have drivers that are just so far below what the best drivers of the world should be. And that's something I think that it's detrimental to the sport. At a certain point, you gotta make a decision of whether or not, like, just having a pile of money behind you should actually give you a seat.
That's true, but I mean, it has always kind of been that way. And I'd say Gutierrez is a lot better than the very worst drivers we've ever seen in Formula One.
And don't forget about Lance Stroll.
Well, I mean, that's the other side of the coin, I would like to think.
Canadians with money are okay. They're cool.
What do you actually, speaking of that, let's take a break from here. What do you, because you also did a fantastic analysis of the junior drivers, future prospects into Formula One. That's another amazing read for anybody that hasn't yet. We'll put the links in the description. But where do you? I saw that you gave Lance Stroll like an excitement. What is it? Excitement rating? Excitement. What do you call it? Excitement something. The excitement score of 18, and compare that to Leclerc as being like the most exciting guy at 28. That's a full 10 points. Yet
it's solid though.
It's solid, but and I by the way, I actually I agree with this. I've been saying Leclerc, fantastically exciting guy. Like his 1 year in Formula 3, like he basically destroyed any other rookie, constantly rookie of the year. He's an exciting guy, but he's not in Formula 1 for some sort of reason. Like he could be. Like, I think he has a rightful claim to be in Formula 1, more so than Gutierrez. If he ever made it, but just as rightful a claim as Lance Stroll. And I don't think the fact that he doesn't have as much money as Lance Stroll is what's stopping him, because he has the Ferrari machine behind him.
Yeah, I think with Leclerc, he's obviously one of the most promising drivers in this junior generation. Mm-hmm. So why rush things? I think is their view.
True.
Put him into GP2, develop him for another year or two, and then bring him in.
Okay, yeah, that's actually a solid argument. Mm-hmm. Now, on the other side, when we were just talking, Lance Stroll, what do you see? What do you see of him? Like, how do you think he's actually going to perform? Let's say things don't move from where they are right now, and he ends up being stacked against Valtteri Bottas, strong driver. How do you see that that battle there going if it stays that way?
My prediction is he'd be beaten by Bottas. Okay. I don't think he'd embarrass himself. I mean, so he is coming in from Formula 3, which is a relatively big jump, but he's not the first driver to do that. And by all accounts, he's getting an unusual amount of mileage under his belt before he comes into Formula One. He's clearly quite talented. I don't know if he's the most talented among his generation, but he clearly has scope for improvement. Like we saw from his first to his second Formula 3 season was a massive step forward. Yeah, we'll see. It's always hard to predict how someone will do in Formula 1, but I think he has a perfectly respectable junior career. I mean, he probably wouldn't be in Formula 1 this year without as much financial support as he has. But I'm not too concerned that he's on the grid.
But yeah. Don't forget, well, for everybody, that his dad paid for him to go, like you just said, to a bunch of F1 tracks with a F1 car with about 20 men to make the car work. bought the team a new simulator.
Yeah.
Definitely bought a duplicate simulator for the house, for at home. He has the same one. Absolutely 2-for-1 deal. And whatever else comes along the way, like all kinds of photo shoots, magazine articles, headlines, etc. Just pushing his name out there. Getting that contract done.
I think that's potentially a pretty big edge in Formula 1. When you consider how limited testing is now. It's very unusual compared to most sports, where people train day on day for hours and hours. I mean, how do you train for a Formula 1 race? Like, you don't go and drive a Formula 1 car, usually, because testing is so limited.
Yeah, if you
so
look
the simulator is kind of the next best thing, and I think drivers who are taking advantage of that may be keeping themselves a little bit sharper these days.
Have you, with these new cars, have you noticed any difference, like, in, like, the way that some drivers, because we were talking about this, I think, off air another time that we just got together, and the video game generation, the people that were born, when like sort of realistic video games were around, we're talking about people that grew up in the late 90s, early 2000s,
playing for the last decade now.
Yeah, for their whole lives.
Modern games, yeah.
Like, do they have a sort of an advantage, or at least when it comes to like doing this for like 70 times a lap, with the buttons and whatever? Like, do you think that like, I mean, this is completely objective, but
doing that hand thing?
Yeah, doing the hand thing all the time. Do you think that makes a difference? I mean, I've kind of noticed like that maybe some of the old school guys, they kind of have to not necessarily drive differently, but their steering wheels look less complicated. If you look at, especially the top teams, how they customize.
Yeah, absolutely. With multitasking, that's the new generation.
Yeah, that's interesting. I haven't noticed that. But yeah, I do really think time spent in sim racing at this point is definitely going to be an advantage to people, and it's probably going to become a major route for entry into racing categories, just because it's so much more economically efficient.
Well, the FIA just not too long ago, a couple months ago, they released like a what's it called, a virtual super license or some sort of. So they're actually instituting, for people that race in just video games, that their career is like competitive video gaming. They're gonna start to institute some sort of a license because they see a value there. They think that at least not necessarily everything, but some of the skill that you need to be a racing driver, be it like things like you said, like being able to control the wheel or whatever, but like the sim part of it, but also some of the racecraft you can just as easily learn in a virtual environment as a real environment, probably.
Of course, our factor, those type of things. But what you were just saying, if you look now, like this is Danny Rick, if you look at a bunch of these drivers' Instagrams and Twitters, they're all posting pictures of themselves like boxing athletes, lifting weights and stuff the past couple of weeks now. Like, I follow because of this, for this podcast. Look, there's Danny Rick just lifting weights. I guess they're concerned that these cars are gonna test them more.
Well,
right?
that's the other thing that's coming. Yeah, 2017. But is there actually like any like real basis for that fear that like they're actually gonna be that much like tougher on your body?
Yes, man. You've never felt 5Gs in your life.
No, I guess not.
You've never felt that. Imagine if you weighed 1,000 pounds for a few seconds, even. You'd be like, oh, that sucked. Yeah, imagine that. That would suck. They do that, like 50 laps in a row, over and over again.
I guess you know what. Let's get into 2017 after we were taking too many tangents now. But going back to the analysis, so Esteban Gutierrez, Rio Haryanto. Let's not even touch on that because he wasn't there. Jolly and Palmer, right at the bottom of the list with those three. Couldn't agree more. We've been saying this all year. He hasn't impressed. I'm actually quite surprised that he retained his contract.
I'm quite surprised he got a contract in the first place, really. I mean, well, I don't have anything against him, but yes, GP2 champion on paper, but after 4 attempts, and in 3 of those attempts he was getting beaten by his teammates. He wasn't competitive, and that was sort of the story of his junior career. He was never very competitive.
Not even
until he stayed for a long time in one series.
I saw this on the article, and I just couldn't stop laughing, man. His dad owns a racing series, and he finished 10th in it.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, the one saving grace for him is he only spent 1 year in go-karts, which is practically unheard of for a Formula 1 driver today.
Yeah.
Usually, they're starting around the age of 5, or at least starting competitive races around the age of 8.
Yeah.
And, he did 1 year at like 14 and then went straight to cars.
Fair
so
enough.
he's missing a sort of a chunk of experience that's just sort of standard for Formula 1 drivers these days.
Yeah.
But, is that a reason to keep him on the grid? I don't think so.
Interestingly, him and his teammate beat each other the same amount of times, though. 8-8.
Yeah, which
But
frankly
I think
doesn't look good for Magnussen.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Yeah,
Yeah.
That actually looks bad for Magnussen.
Bad for
not good for Jolyon.
Yeah.
Say what you will about their car and whatever. The Renault, how atrocious of a season they had. It was just, and starting from the back, there's not much that you can do if you're at that level. But I think I had higher hopes with Magnussen. I gotta be honest with you. I thought that Magnussen was a solid driver, like when he got to McLaren at the very beginning. But such is life. And the next one was the next driver up to 20, Nico Hülkenberg. Another massive disappointment in a way, because is it now time to stop talking about Nico Hülkenberg as being the guy that deserves a seat
The
in
platinum
the top team?
license.
Yeah, Mr. Platinum License. Is it time now to finally stop talking about that and just hold him accountable to whatever his talent is and see what he's actually going to be able to do?
I guess so. I mean, I guess his hope is that, in the new formula we're seeing this year, I mean, the cars will be substantially different. Maybe that will somehow be suited better to his style. Because the weird thing about Hülkenberg is he's just been so quick in everything except Formula 1.
Mm-hmm. That's where it counts, though, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At first, when these new cars, with the since 2014, when the new regulations were brought in, you kind of gave him a pass because he was too tall, he was too big, the biggest driver, so that could have given him an unfair disadvantage. So you had to look at his achievements in that lens. But then time kept moving, and
there's also sort of a problem I have with that excuse, which is that he's always looked extremely good over one lap. Like in qualifying, he's always beating his teammates. He's always got a good time advantage there. And if it were a pure weight time disadvantage, you'd expect that really to show up in qualifying, particularly. But instead, he has this edge in qualifying, and then he just doesn't seem to manage his races as well as his teammates. So, I would tend to put that down to sort of a poor understanding or poor management of the Pirelli tire.
Which Perez, his teammate this year, is reckoned by some people to be one of the best at doing that and managing the tires.
Right.
Yeah, Perez came into his own this year.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah.
He really matured as a driver. You
look
tell.
at his races and points for the year by your numbers here. He's like 130, 140% over Hülkenberg for the season.
Yeah, he did very well.
Counting the races they finished, yeah.
Now Hülkenberg also was part of the center of one of the biggest stories of the late part of the season, which was obviously his signing with Renault, with the works team, that a lot of people, including yourself, are saying that it's probably the smartest move from him. I honestly agree, because if he's gonna be able to actually prove now to all of us that he is a worthy, platinum license holder and worthy of all the praise that we've been giving him. He ought to be able to prove that in a
Should
Renault.
be able to lead a works team to a
works team,
championship.
yeah.
And-
Or close enough anyway before his career.
And we said last week too, Renault promised Red Bull now engine parity. So there's no excuse anymore for Red Bull beating Renault, right?
Yeah. Well,
There should be
well, they have the monumental excuse of Adrian Newey, and apparently he's back on full payroll.
Adrian Newey, Max Verstappen, Danny Ricciardo.
But interesting question: who will have the better car next year, Renault or Force India? I'm not sure.
Question of the ages.
Who's the what's
Who's
up?
gonna have the better car, Renault or Force India?
Oh, I think. Oh man.
Okay.
I mean, Force India were way quicker in 2016, but that effectively counts for nothing next year.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wait. Yeah. We're talking about complete, almost as complete of a clean slate that you can get, because we're talking about new groundbreaking aero regulations that are going to be introduced, as well as doing away with the token system. So on the engine side, things are going to be way different. I watched on Peter Windsor's. Do you ever go on Peter Windsor's channel?
Yep.
Great stuff there. Scarbs, he was on, and he did a little 3-minute piece on why he believes that 2017 is going to be plagued with engine failures. And to his point, is basically saying, like, listen, some of these teams, now that they're free of they're given free reign and with little on-track testing, we might see a team like Renault that out of desperation could choose to go on like a really on the limit and with completely new technology, and all of a sudden find that throughout the year they're going to have to like fine tune it and work on reliability.
Yeah. On that vein, Honda is rumored now to have split their turbo and compressor like Mercedes going into this season. So
they're gonna have to like make that work. They're gonna have to like make that work, and we're gonna see maybe some cars breaking.
That's like a restart. It's like starting over. Yeah.
So they might turn up with the 2014 Mercedes.
Yeah.
and changes within Mercedes, changes within the top team, people leaving, and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's definitely gonna be like 2017 is gonna be a not necessarily a big reset, but let's call it like a half a reset at least of many variables. Definitely looking forward to that. Definitely looking forward to what Hülkenberg can do. Please, I mean, I was a big Hülkenberg fan. I'd love to see him actually, prove everyone wrong or prove me wrong now, and go and do a fantastic job next year. But right now, as it looks, he's at the bottom of the list. Even so, you in your analysis, you say that Esteban Ocon even performed better than him, and that's another tall guy.
By the few races he competed, but
Ocon, see, he's exciting to watch though.
Yep.
Yeah, we're gonna get to see. We're gonna really find out next year now. But
do you think it's do you think it's weird? Not necessarily weird, but are there any advantages or disadvantages to come to F1 via the DTM route like Ocon and Verline did?
I think there's very little advantage to it. I think Mercedes is doing that with their drivers for their own interests, which is that DTM is important for them for marketing. I don't really see that the skills you would gain in that series are of much relevance to Formula One. I really think a driver would be always better off in GP2 or World Series by Renault or even Super Formula.
Which is apparently like the next like testing ground. That's where they put Van Dorn. That's what Gasly's going to. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be great if Super Formula was broadcast like in English?
Yeah, it's a little bit hard to watch those races.
I mean,
but they're usually pretty cool. I mean, those cars are quick, like seriously quick.
They're compared as the most downforce comparable, the most downforce relevant, I guess.
Yeah, I mean they're slightly
that
quicker
type of
than GP2 cars, I think, which makes them the next quickest thing after Formula One.
That's amazing. Mm-hmm. On a circuit, but they only race it like 8 times a year or something. A great series.
Yeah.
I would like honestly that's just one. If I had like a list of New Year's wishes, that would be one for me. Like to be able to
drive
watch
one of those cars.
Well, I mean, geez, that's never gonna happen. But I'm too fat. but to be able to watch Super Formula, I think it would be great. I think all these little formula out there would do themselves a great service if they just like made the content available online the same way that Formula 3 is doing. Just leave it. Anybody can watch it.
Yeah, they have a brilliant structure. Yeah.
So it's moving on. K-Mag next.
Yep.
4.5
Yeah.
points. Number 18.
Ahead of Ocon.
Destroyed his Palmer, his teammate. Yeah, ahead of Ocon.
Ahead of Ocon, below Verline though.
Just.
Yeah, really not the season I expected from Magnussen. I thought he looked fairly respectable at McLaren. I mean, clearly Button had the edge, but Button is a very strong driver and experienced. So, I thought really Magnussen would put away Palmer pretty easily, but he just didn't.
Absolutely. So yeah, I still like. I think it's a big question mark, like, because I didn't also, even though I was disappointed, I didn't I couldn't pinpoint to you what exactly is that changed from when he was. He's just not as good in general. Maybe like he's just sort of turned it down. It's not like oh he lost the grip of he's just not as good with the front end grip. He's just not as good in qualifying anymore. No, it's just like overall he's kind of slid down. It's too bad.
Yeah, I mean it's a hard car in which to judge a driver as well, because clearly that Renault was maybe the most difficult car to drive on the grid. It really didn't look good. Its handling wasn't stable. It just snapped between understeer and oversteer, which is pretty unusual these days.
Yeah, no doubt. Verline, another like a great season against Haryanto. Like there was absolutely no comparison there. Ocon, when Ocon was put into the mix, he gave him a run for his money a bit, but still,
that was a good fight.
Yeah.
At first, it looked like Verline was going to handle it pretty easily, but by the end of the season, some of the stats were actually in Ocon's favor.
Forgive me again. I know this is unorthodox, but if you average the two scores for Haryanto and Ocon, 3.09 and 4.46, you get a 3.76. And with Verline's 4.66, he beat them by, 30% over the season.
He beat them collectively,
both his teammates.
but that's largely down to Haryanto being much
more. Yeah, more Haryanto for sure.
Yeah. Verline, another great driver, but curiously, it seems like, or at least it seemed for a little bit that Mercedes were putting maybe a little bit more of their money on Ocon, or on seeing Ocon move through the ranks.
Right.
Some people say that Verline's actual real life personality might have something to do with it.
He said that himself. We talked about that a couple weeks ago too. He admitted himself in an interview. He said, I saw that he got along better with the team. I wasn't jiving with them. But there was also some sort of secret source headline that said from inside Renault that Verline didn't get the job because he didn't give up any Mercedes secrets. Somebody inside Renault, we talked about that too, remember?
Yeah.
I forget which magazine posted it, which magazine printed that, but that was another speculation, was that he didn't give Renault any Mercedes hints or secrets or tips about the engine, how they run it, how they set it up, or anything like that.
And honestly, okay, so now that we're talking again about, like it's sort of on the topic of the Renaults here and then Force India here, and who's going to be the better car next year. Absolutely, and I'm basing this, what I'm going to say, completely on, broad and unbridled speculation with absolutely zero base. Actually, hang on a second, sorry. Do you want to get that mic?
Yes. You don't have to stop talking.
Anyway, so just based on complete speculation and absolutely no scientific basis to this, I think that it's going to be Force India, purely because Force India is probably going to just, hunker down, keep doing what they're doing, keep their highly efficient aero program where they go on, like, instead of like spending months making something out of carbon fiber. They just do something that's approximate by 3D printing it, and that's what they bring to their wind tunnels, etc. Doing things the smart way and just working hard. I think they're gonna be able to do a little more than Renault. And I only say this because even though they are a works team, they're still French, and they're gonna go around it the French way and try to do shit like that. They're gonna try to be like, all right, what kind of secrets can you bring? How can we politicize this? How can we be French about this?
And a bunch of them knew before we did about the French Grand Prix return.
Right.
So there's pressure there to bring a French driver into the whole circus. Just like everything. Just like the
Question
Brazilian.
is, does Verline have a seat next year?
Yeah, does he?
Because if Manor goes,
Yeah, he might not
where
if
does he end?
Manor does not compete.
Is that why they're keeping like the whole like announcement of the second seat at Mercedes so secret still? Because they didn't know what was gonna happen with Manor. Hey.
well,
Perhaps.
I mean, Bottas has always seemed like the natural pick for that seat.
Yeah.
But then what does Williams do? Because I don't think they really want to run Verline alongside Stroll, because then they've got two pretty inexperienced drivers. I mean,
As
on the
far as
other
we know,
hand,
Massa's
what's their
coming
alternative?
back.
Especially if Mercedes want to keep Verline in the sport and Manor's gone.
I think it would be a mistake to bring Felipe Massa back, even though that's what it seems like they're doing.
They may do that.
It
yeah.
seems to.
But then
be in
Verline is
semi-confirmed.
almost certainly out of the seat.
Yeah. Then what does he do?
It seems to have been semi-confirmed. They're going to pay Massa €6 million to compete next year, to come back, where he made $4 the year before. So 150% of his salary of a €4 million salary is insane.
but some of that money, like, let's be honest, if it actually ends up going that way, behind the curtains, some of that money is coming as some sort of a concession from Bernie, because we all know that Bernie is heavily invested in keeping a Brazilian driver on the grid. That's everybody knows that.
And a British presence.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
Keeping Williams happy and competing at the top, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, now that we're talking about Felipe Massa, so he was number 16 in your ranking.
Yeah, he's next.
For reasons that everybody can probably imagine, he didn't impress in his last season. I think that if he wanted to like leave the sport with some sort of dignity, he would have done so a couple of years back.
I mean, it was an okay season. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't great. Yeah.
Still, out qualified by Bottas, outraced by Bottas, points definitely, whatever, etc. We all know what happened with Felipe. 15, Danny Kvyat. Interesting season for him. It's horrible start. Well, actually, yeah, kind of okay start. Horrible weirdness happening in the middle, and then he managed to, like, by the skin of the teeth, show like a little bit of like, hey, hang on, guys, I can still drive F1 at the very end.
Just barely. I'm surprised they've kept him for another year. Really surprised, to be honest. I mean, they were unusually ruthless in the decision to demote him mid-season, but then they were unusually generous in deciding to keep him. So
Yeah.
His
maybe
girlfriend is so
they were a little
hot.
too harsh and it needed to all balance out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kvyat, he's still like, I don't know what to make of it ever, really, because he did, he finished that podium earlier in the year in China, right? And that was probably one of the best drives that he's shown. And it was so early on against Danny Rick. It gave me a reason to cheer, right? And like tons of Russians were super excited. But then he went like the complete opposite end. So
yeah, he got a little depressed.
Yeah,
halfway through the year for a little bit, for a couple weeks.
Is he then one of those
He was
drivers?
a bit down.
And for that, like, and by that also like just sportsmen in general that just let their emotions completely rule how they're thinking and how they behave on the way they perform. It's
that's
It did seem that way.
that's what sports psychologists are for.
I guess so.
Help you get over that feeling.
Well, yeah,
Because it's such a big thing, and like,
yeah.
no, seriously,
Yeah.
it's just such a prevalent thing in sports. Of
Grosjean did like 2 years with a sports psychologist, and his performance was actually better after.
it's become a big thing in the last decade. Just getting over that, your teammates pressuring you, your family, whatever it is, the media.
You're watching Game of Thrones. People call you. That throws your whole day in a completely different direction, I'm sure.
Grosjean's next, number 14.
Yep.
Oh,
I thought he started very strong. I mean, I started running the model predictions basically 5 races into the season, and at that point he was around the top 6. You know, he had this very strong start to the season, and then he just fell and fell and fell throughout the season as he, you know, stopped scoring points, stopped beating Gutierrez as convincingly.
yeah.
So like he stopped like just below 30% below the grid, a third of the way below the grid, but the average, I guess. But
Yep.
as a team, though, Haas was second last. If you they're last if you don't count Manor.
No, they were rated above those teams. Once you correct for drivers.
Oh, sorry. I'm doing the unorthodox adding the 2 drivers together.
Yeah, okay.
But driver performance wise, just
So
Gutierrez.
the model, let me just check. Yeah, so the model had Haas 6, just ahead of Renault and Toro Rosso.
Mike, can you pull
Right,
up
so,
the...
okay, so if you had the
latest
as far as drivers, I know, I'm probably making you want to pull your hair out. But yeah, it's last 7.59. Just Gutierrez pulled him down so hard for him to be able to shine. Like both drivers, like in reality, both drivers really have to do well to make the team shine as a whole.
Yeah, agreed. And unfortunately for Haas, like there weren't many point scoring opportunities, but when they came, they were all of a sudden in with very good points, and Gutierrez just wasn't taking those chances for his Grosjean.
He's getting yelled at more than anything. But yeah, they admitted towards the end of the year that after they got those first points at the start of the year, they gave up on 2016 altogether. They just went straight to next year as soon as they got those points.
It might have been the smart move, though. Let's be honest. This chart here I found like genuinely quite interesting. It's the first one that you put in the on this year's model, in this year's model. We were talking about Grosjean, so this is when it comes to play, and I think, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but that green line being the Perez line, it actually sort of reveals something that's sort of counterintuitive to what most people think. Like his lap times get consistently longer and longer. Like he's actually grinding through the tires more than people give him credit for.
Yeah, so just to be clear, this is from the Bahrain race.
Yes.
So these times are specific to that race. So yeah, in that race, Perez was really chewing through the super softs very quickly, compared to Grosjean and Magnussen.
And
I mean, that's not necessarily true all the time. I haven't done that analysis for the whole season because I know Perez has his reputation of generally being pretty good on his tires.
But no, so that the fact that was so counterintuitive, and he was, and it's a race that like he didn't finish in a bad spot. Like it still gives him like it goes to show that he can actually crank it when it comes to it. Like he doesn't have the one style of driving. I don't know. I found that pretty interesting. The Magnussen line, like again, showing how he compares to Grosjean and how Grosjean is just maybe like has a bit more of a soft touch, or at least he did at that point. Interesting to see all this stuff. I mean, I love this stuff, man. You should do more of this.
I am actually working on an analysis. I managed to get some old testing data on Bridgestone tires, so I'm hoping to sort of get an idea of how they compare to Pirelli tires.
Oh man!
Oh, wicked!
That would be sweet.
Cool.
Looking forward to that. There you go. You heard it here first. Again, so now 13.
Down to 13, yeah. Marcus Ericsson
ahead of Grosjean, and that.
Yeah.
So he's. I know that we talked about him before, like when we first started doing the podcast or something, and like how, despite his money, I guess so. This would have been like when he first joined F1, he kind of joined F1 in with a big backing that people kind of didn't know where it was coming from, but he came with some money. But the speculation by some people or some of what you read is that aside from the money, he actually was, out of the people that joined when he joined, was probably one of the ones that had a bit of talent to back him up. And over the years, I mean, not in a like drastic way, but we have seen him getting better. His racecraft is better. He's more exciting to watch, and clearly he's got something going. And now he's got a ton of money from the Tetra Pak group. We know now, backing and basically buying Sauber.
Yeah, we went through that a couple weeks ago. They're buying Sauber. Sauber is gonna go with the old engine this year and revamp next year with the whole new chassis, engine, and car package. But don't want to forget that he went to the hospital about 3 times this year, at least twice. Don't forget, he crashed the car really bad.
Yeah.
I think, where was it, in Hungary maybe?
Yeah.
I think maybe in Hungary. He crashed the car really bad and he went to the hospital with a sprained arm. And then a week or two, or maybe it was 3 weeks later, in one of the Asian races, he was training on his bike, doing some endurance running.
Q1 during Hungary, yes.
Yeah, so yeah, Hungary. In the first qualifying, he crashed, smashed the shit out of his car, didn't race that weekend. And then he went for a bike ride, one of the other Asian races, sorry, I forget which one. But yeah, he crashed into a chicken when he was doing 35 or 40.
No, didn't you hear? It was a man-eating crocodile.
Oh, crocodile.
No, that was just like, people were being funny about it.
Yeah, he ran into a chicken. He rode over a chicken with his bicycle, flipped off of it, and broke his arm off.
Yeah, but it still doesn't mean that he's not F1 material, and nor that he won't continue to grow. Is he championship material?
I don't know. I think someone who's running into chickens, frankly, shouldn't be on the grid.
You know, Vettel avoided those seagulls. Don't forget.
Exactly, right. Ability to avoid poultry is a critical.
Oh, man. No, but Ericsson... It's not like he shouldn't be an F1. He's not.
No,
he had quite a good season actually. And if you throw out Brazil, you can basically flip his and Nasser's ratings. Like he was sort of just outside the top 10,
right,
up until that.
Nasser only just beat him.
Well, Nasser just had that fantastic race in Brazil.
0.17 points.
Probably just the home advantage or whatever for him. First time, or like second time racing in Brazil. You know,
well, it was an interesting race for him. I mean, he basically didn't do a pit stop all race.
Yeah,
so he was always on the right tire essentially, and always taking pit stops when there was a stoppage.
So
yeah, these two, Ericsson and Nasser, like within 2% their driver ratings.
Now we're talking about
super close.
One of the points that you made on your model is that we're talking about Manor and Sauber being basically like you compare them to being the same car roughly or whatever, same performance.
Yeah.
I think Manor now with a solid financial backing is a team that's definitely worth hanging on to if you want some sort of an F1 future, because if they have the money behind them, their facilities are, for a team like that's at that end of the grid, they have their own wind tunnel. Not even Force India has their own wind tunnel. You know, like they have apparently very, very competent facilities thanks to the huge influx of money back in 2008 or whatever with BMW before they pull off the sport. But those, like the stuff is still there. And if you have enough money to run it at full blast, you can probably chuck out a pretty good racing car if you have the right people.
I guess the issue is it's a good structure if you're going to run sort of a midfield or above team.
Right.
It's maybe the wrong structure for a backmarker team. Like maybe you're actually better off doing the Force India model where you don't own your own wind tunnel and have to maintain it. You just buy the time you need.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
But money, yes, this money that's coming to them, I think it could help him. Well, I mean, it might bring him back to the midfield, sort of where they were when Sergio Perez was racing for them. Remember that?
Remember Perez?
That was a good year for Sauber. Honestly, I'd love to see them going back to that.
Yeah.
What else do you got? Wait, sorry, where are we now? So
next is Perez, number 12.
Hey,
Perez,
speaking of Perez,
5.57, yeah. Beat Hülkenberg, like we said earlier. Beat Hülkenberg in the qualifyings, not in the races.
I think
in the points.
I have a thing. I think since 2012, we've only seen one really bad year for Perez. That year that he went to McLaren, like it's like something happened. The pressure got to him. the fame got to him in a bad way, and like he just sort of stumbled. But if you cross that year of his,
Well, also their first year together, Hulkenberg had the advantage over Perez.
right, but he was finding
And
his footing.
if you look at the 3 years altogether, it's almost exactly tied.
Oh yeah. But they were both they were both being good.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think
The
that
question is whether either of them can quite get to that next level.
I think I have better hopes on Perez doing better next year than Hulkenberg. But that may mean nothing.
Right.
That just an F1 team like I think it was Ross Braun. And did you read his recent book with Adam Parr?
Parts of it. I haven't read the whole thing yet.
Yeah, pretty good so far though, eh?
Yeah.
So one of the things that they were talking about is basically how it takes it's not like an overnight thing. It takes like 3 years to all of a sudden like drive an F1 team in a completely different direction if that's what you want to do. If you want to like change the whole design philosophy, it's not just a thing that you can do overnight. So Hulkenberg, for him to be able to like really cash in on that move, he's gonna have to wait, and that's just it.
Yeah.
But Sergio Perez.
Well, I mean, on the other hand, sometimes when you have a big regulation change, one or two teams figure out something revolutionary that no one else does, and then all of a sudden they get a big boost.
That's true.
And we'll almost certainly see that next year. Some teams will figure something out, and it will really upset the hierarchy. It could be Renault, it could be anyone.
I hope it's not Red Bull. Can you imagine
It could be Red Bull, it could be Mercedes.
Can you imagine another era of Red Bull domination? I mean, as much as I like Danny Rick.
I think it would be more interesting with Ricciardo and Verstappen there than Vettel and Weber.
Yeah, true. Yeah, it would be.
Yeah.
It definitely would be. I'm sure you're rooting for Danny Rick, obviously.
I don't. No, I don't. I'm pretty neutral on that, to be honest.
on that team rivalry. Like,
You don't want anyone to ask you to do a shoey in support?
I definitely don't want to do a shoey. I don't know. I get always put off by sort of very patriotic reporting of news. So, if anything, it kind of biases me against Australian drivers.
would you do a shoey though?
Under the right circumstances, sure.
Sweet. Now we got this. We got this live on the internet. The internet has seen that. We'll work on what the circumstances are and hold you to that later.
Nazar's next, number 11.
Ahead of Perez, and this is what I like. One of the biggest shocks for me, because I didn't see that coming.
I think
Difficult comparison to draw, really, because the Sauber was pretty shit this year.
yeah.
Hard to know if you'd put them in equal machinery where they'd be. But that's the model's opinion.
I guess most of that over his teammate comes from just the points in the races.
It comes from Brazil. I mean, it's important to remember that the model does use this extended point system. So it doesn't only care about top 10 finishes. It is awarding points for 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, etc. Decaying down in much the same way as the points do within the top 10.
That's why we're talking to you, because it covers everybody. Yeah,
Which is
exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, Nasser, but he did do a good job, and let's not forget that. So Nasser is interesting because he actually worked his ass off during the junior categories. He was actually he didn't come from massive money like some Brazilian drivers have done. Not a lot of massive sponsorship, but one key person that helped him along the way that spotted a talent was Kimi Räikkönen. He basically Kimi brought him under his wing and like he was part of like Kimi Räikkönen's own like little junior talent management scheme that he's got going on. So Kimi clearly saw something there. So he's got some talent. He's definitely got a lot of work to do if he wants to be championship winning material. But he's there.
Honestly, he also might not have a seat next year, so it might be a moot point.
Yeah. It's true.
Yeah.
But if Manor is going, there really aren't many available seats left for a whole bunch of drivers.
Yeah, at all, really. Which takes us to number 10, Bottas.
So, this is where we start to get into the real and the serious drivers. And you start to see why Bottas has got that Mercedes seat.
Or if he does. It's not announced yet.
He does. But yeah, above Bottas are, the people who have really earned their seats.
Well, I mean, except for Jensen. Jensen finished 9 ahead of Bottas. I actually agree with this because whereas Bottas was great against Massa, Button was just like he was just not only like just better overall like in performance. If you could see that like how if they had been in the same car, Bottas would have had a hard time going against Button. But also Bottas, remember at the very beginning of the season how he just had a bit of a lull. Like I think he attributed to the back problems. He took a while to get rid of the back problems or whatever
from the year before.
Yeah, but still, it's still
flew over those curves. Yeah. But as well, Button and Raikkonen this season ended up with the same number of points.
Raikkonen, what a season! Actually, that was one of the most uplifting news for me because I've been a Raikkonen fan for a while, and then like sort of like by the third race this year, I was throwing the towel, man. I was like, oh man, Raikkonen, what are you doing, man? Like, what's going on? And then he like woke up and was like, boy, I guess I'm an F1 driver.
After his son popped out.
Yeah, I guess so.
It was a pretty good season from Raikkonen. I was not expecting it. I thought we'd just see further decline, to be honest.
Yeah. But it turns out that after he had maybe he was just worried about his kid. Now, after the kid was out, he's like, all right, let's go back to this.
Oh, maybe he's getting some sleep again.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. Rosberg, the foreshadowing of his retirement, his score was the Devil's Mark.
666. And he's number 6 driver.
And he's the number 6 driver. Yeah. The whole thing, we should have seen it coming years ago.
He's never been. He wasn't he just wasn't an exciting driver to watch that much. I mean, not when compared to Lewis. He's not like a nice guy to like listen to interviews on. We even said like, you know what, thank goodness that we don't really have to talk about him too much more now after he's retired.
Yeah, what do you want to say? The mark of Satan, he's got that red eye.
He puts pads like lady sanitary napkins on his forehead. Did you hear about that? Did you know about that?
Yeah.
Is that what he does?
Yeah, that's you didn't hear about this?
Maxi pads?
Yeah. So he puts sanitary napkins on his forehead to prevent all the sweat from. Yeah, man, this is. He came out and said that. He said that, not me.
I gotta say that from a technical side, I think he'd be one of the most interesting F1 drivers to have a one-on-one chat with, because I think he really understands the intricacies, the intricacies of what's going on.
Yep.
As opposed to just being instinctively very good at driving.
He got accepted in an aerospace engineering program before becoming an F1 driver. Like, I mean, from high school, but still, like, I mean, you gotta be at least mildly technically minded to get.
He also topped the Williams engineering aptitude test for drivers.
Oh.
They give that to every as they come.
For a while. Actually,
interesting.
Yeah,
I didn't know.
That's pretty cool, and he speaks 5 languages. I think he has. I think he's looking forward to a very fruitful and successful career in the world of F1 as either a manager or some sort of presenter or just like an overall paddock guy, like a guy that hangs around the paddock all the time.
You just work on subtitles in other languages. Who knows?
But. So I'm glad that he got that, and I'm glad that he got out when he. Honestly, I'm glad that he got out when he got out. That's what I said before. I thought it was a classy move.
I saw it coming. It was a bit of a surprise for me.
Yeah,
but it'll be interesting to see what he does from here. Whether he comes to visit the paddock or whether he just wants a clean break from F1. I don't know. Can imagine him in the Mercedes garage next year. Like, hey, Lewis, how's it going?
Yeah. Hey, just poking. Hey, man.
How was qualifying, Lewis?
Remember when we used to be on the same team last year?
Yeah. Let me see your data. Come on. They're probably gonna end up being like friends again. Fine. Honestly, like it's just kind of like how when politicians shake hands after an election. It's like they're gonna be fine together. And I think that as world champion, I'm not 100% on this fact, but as world champion, you pretty much get like a free pass to go to any race. and go to the paddock or whatever. So like, no, that's a cool thing. I mean, he's got that for the rest of his life.
Sure.
Lewis Hamilton at 6th.
Actually,
Yeah,
Rosberg
I would
is
say a
also
little
number
underrated
six.
though. I think a little underrated.
I mean,
Just because he had so many issues in qualifying.
Right.
And if you take those out, he was clearly the better performer than Rosberg.
Sorry, I said Rosberg. What? Ricciardo. Hamilton and Ricciardo, same score.
Yeah, true.
6.98.
Yeah, the whole, if you look at like 2nd through about 7th, they're all very close ratings. Like, race by race, as little things were happening. The order of those drivers was just churning constantly.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. So Danny Rick and Hamilton.
Yeah, in my view, both of those were fairly underrated for reasons sort of laid out in the article. Ricardo sort of had some unfortunate teammate comparisons, with Kvyat just sort of losing the plot once he went to Toro Rosso.
Yeah.
If it were down to just me, I'd probably put Ricardo in my top 2.
Okay.
I thought he had a really brilliant season. I mean, there were some bad spots early on in the battle against Verstappen. I mean, that battle was fairly close overall, but I'd say Ricardo probably had a small edge. So really a very strong season from Ricardo, I thought.
Mike,
yeah.
can you just pull this up just so we can the viewers can see it? So this just goes with what you were talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's that chart where you put like the drivers' faces up and
Oh
down.
yeah.
That's right there. Is that on the screen right now?
Yep.
So can you just talk us through like this chart and like it's because we're seeing Verstappen at the top of both of them basically.
Exactly. So what the model does is it looks at the driver's point scoring rate for each team they race for across the year, averaged. And then from that it derives a performance metric. So on the left-hand side you have the driver performance metrics for Toro Rosso, and on the right-hand side you have for Red Bull. So at Toro Rosso, Verstappen had clearly the highest scoring rate of any of the Toro Rosso drivers, ahead of Sainz and well ahead of Kvyat. Then if you look at Red Bull, so although Ricciardo slightly outscored Verstappen while they were teammates together, if you average across the whole season, Verstappen comes out marginally ahead in points per race. And that's partly because the Red Bull improved across the season.
Yeah.
So he wasn't in Red Bull in the early part of the season when maybe it wasn't quite as good. He also jumped ship from Toro Rosso when they started to go down. So Verstappen kind of got the best of both cars in a way. And the model, assumes team performance is kind of stable within a season. Whereas in this case, probably it was varying somewhat. So in that case, Verstappen kind of benefits from both of those comparisons. Ricciardo is hurt somewhat because he spent the whole season at Red Bull, and he probably faced a stronger version of Kvyat than Sainz faced at Toro Rosso, I would argue.
But and that is super interesting what you said, like how he kind of got the best of both cars, because it's true. Like as the Toro Rosso got locked with the old Ferrari engine that wasn't getting developed, they did start to slide back, and after and they obviously must have realized that their time was better spent on designing this year's car, 2017, and then he moved to Red Bull as Red Bull like finesse the program. So that kind of stuff would probably, if you're like a fervent Verstappen fan, would give you like you wouldn't look at that. You wouldn't say that. You would just be like, just look at this. Look at how good he was. But you're not taking into consideration the fact that he had all that going for him. I found that interesting as well.
Kvyat wanted to quit, and he was crying, getting all depressed halfway through.
Yeah,
just it wasn't working for him.
The top four.
I think there's a lot of uncertainty there. I mean, I'd be pretty comfortable saying Verstappen and Ricciardo are closely matched, and Sainz is probably within that trio, also closely matched. As to their respective orders, I wouldn't be too confident.
Well, we'd have to see, wait and see what happens this year. That's gonna be great.
Yeah, exactly. We need more data. We always need more data.
Yeah.
Number 4 is
top 4 now.
Vettel. 7.21 points.
A lot of people were pretty unhappy with Vettel being that high in the ratings. Maybe he is slightly overrated, or more that Hamilton and Ricciardo were both kind of underrated by the model. But actually, Vettel's season was a little better than it looked on paper. Like, he did actually have a clear edge against Raikkonen.
Yeah.
he had more bad luck than Raikkonen. That's definitely true.
Yeah.
On the other hand, he didn't have the kind of advantage over Raikkonen that he had last year when he topped the rankings. And certainly nothing like the advantage Alonso had over Raikkonen the year before that.
Yeah.
So whether that's down to Raikkonen improving or Vettel getting worse or some combination thereof, I'm not really sure.
Vettel also, I mean, he kind of, I don't know if this was, well, of course it was, aided by Ferrari strategy mishaps. But he kind of did start as those became more frequent, he himself kind of started to drop the ball a little bit.
Yeah, he seemed to kind of lose patience. I mean, there were a lot of what I thought were fairly sloppy errors throughout race weekend sessions from Vettel that we're not normally seeing. He was clearly getting pretty agitated over the radio.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, guys.
Honestly, what are we doing here?
And so, I mean, Vettel, like, what else can we say about him? Like, we basically been talking about his, fall from grace. I mean, and still at fourth, even though it's a pretty decent spot, and like you said, some people are telling you, like, why did he end up so high? Still, to me, this is still not where a 4-time world champion should be. So, I mean, really, he should be higher just from that, but he's not. So that's there's something there, and he did have bad luck, but
he did have bad luck. But even when you correct for that and you look at the time differences, the advantage he had in terms of lap times in races and qualifying over Raikkonen, it was much smaller this year than in 2016 than 2015.
Yeah. Hey, Mike, sorry, can you change the scene so we can see all of us? Is that
Number 3, Carlos
Sainz.
Sainz.
I got you, fam.
7.26
points per race.
Yeah. Thought it was a very impressive season from Sainz.
Everybody's been saying that.
Yeah.
I wasn't predicting him to be quite that strong. I thought his racecraft was really fantastic.
Yeah.
And he just demolished Kvyat. I mean, even if Kvyat was not at his best or emotionally affected, I mean, that was one of the most one-sided teammate matchups I've seen in a while.
Yeah, I was gonna say in the first 4 races against Verstappen, he wasn't doing as well. Against Kvyat, he smashed him the whole rest of the season. 16 more races, 17 more races.
This is something that Peter Windsor used to say. Like he started the year when he was talking about the different drivers and whatever. Like back then it was obviously Verstappen and Sainz in the same team.
Yeah.
And then he was talking about Danny Rick and Kvyat at that time, and he kind of compared the two Red Bull owned teams, and he said something to the vein of like, it's kind of like they have this arrangement where they have a top driver that, and then he saw that so he was talking about Ricciardo and then Verstappen in Toro Rosso as the drivers that drive very smoothly, very just very smooth drivers, as opposed to their counterpart, who was very corrective, very driving doing this kind of thing, as opposed to one fluid movement. Obviously, he's generalizing, but he was trying to say how some teams kind of have that kind of dynamic in between the two drivers going. One that can do the smooth, talented kind of natural driving, whereas the other ones that are just more violent, more reactive. He wasn't giving preference to any kind of driving. He was even saying that they both work if you can make him work. But then when the dynamic, I guess, got crisscrossed, and then you saw in his eyes, I guess, in the Red Bull, 2 smooth drivers, and then in the Toro Rosso, 2 corrective drivers.
Right.
You did see how Carlos Sainz was definitely, if anything, out of that pair, definitely the better corrective driver.
Right.
And when you see him drive, and especially those drives that he had in the rain, you just see how no matter how smooth you are, just the fact that Sainz is always having to think on his feet and always looking for where to attack, that helped him a lot, and that was brilliant to see. I I wasn't necessarily a Carlos Sainz fan before 2016, but towards the end, I definitely was. Yeah. Anyway, that's something I liked 100%.
100.
Question is, what will happen next year between them, with Sainz and Kvyat? Because the cars should be very different to drive.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we'll see how it suits the different styles.
Well, those big ass tires. Do you think there's any truth to like the fact that another thing that Peter Windsor was saying in a way was that these big tires and just the more mechanical grip is gonna give drivers that are corrective, the guys that are dancing with the car, not necessarily an advantage, but it's gonna give them more ways to approach a corner, if that makes sense. The guys that are gonna be throwing the car around.
Maybe. I don't know. I feel like it's easy to make a lot of predictions like this,
Yeah.
and then often they don't come true, and everyone forgets.
Partly what our podcast is about.
Yeah. That's exactly what we're banking on. But
So number 2 here, Max Verstappen,
okay, yeah.
7.26 points per race.
Couldn't have asked for a better. I mean, he wasn't a rookie, but come on. After he found his footing in Formula One, like, I guess this was the year where like we believed the hype. We believed the Max Verstappen hype.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
pretty spectacular year.
reason
I mean,
to
certainly
believe
not a perfect year, but for someone so inexperienced,
Yeah.
pretty
I'll
phenomenal.
let you take the last one since
Yeah. Well, do you think that says anything negative about the sport? The fact is, this has been, since he joined, this has been the thing, and some people are still harping on about it. What's his name? Jacques Villeneuve even like say, it's just not good. Like, to some people, it's just not good that these young people are coming to the sport, and somehow being able to, finish number 2 in your standings. Is it something that's intrinsically by itself bad for the sport?
I don't think so. I think it probably actually boosts the sport's popularity. But I can see where that argument is coming from. I mean, on the one hand, you could argue that it gives the perception that the cars are too easy to drive.
Yeah.
When you've got this kind of, skinny teenager comes in, having never driven anything with more than 200 horsepower, and he's just fine. Clearly the cars are more stable these days than they have been in the past. There's not as much going on in the cockpit. Like, yeah, people are pressing lots of buttons, but we don't have manual gear shifting or anything like that. We have power steering. I mean, that didn't exist in the past.
Yeah.
I'd like to see Verstappen handle the car with no power steering. I think that would be interesting.
Especially the 2017s with the bigger tires. Yeah.
So there is that. And then I guess there's also the fact that he kind of came in and he upset the status quo with respect to racecraft.
Yeah.
He seemed to be doing things very differently. And
like very
it led
aggressively,
people to
right?
say, well, has the sport become so staid, that everyone is just sort of driving within a particular formula. And then, if someone else comes in with a new idea, it's kind of a revolution all of a sudden. So, why were others not attempting these things?
Because, well, I think one of the headlines that really stuck to me was Max Verstappen has exposed the Formula One groupthink. That was a headline that came out after, and the article was basically like just not necessarily like attacking, but really highlighting the fact that there is sort of a racing indoctrination that you go through, like with, I guess, like many, like in any kind of human endeavor right now. If you choose to like go up the ladder, there are like, you'll find people along the way that will tell you, oh, you have to approach a corner this way, in terms of single seaters and whatever. Oh, and to drive like the most of the car, you have to do this. But yeah, and then comes in this guy with very little experience that's willing to try something else and show everybody that no, you don't necessarily have to do that. Very cool, very good to see. Great story.
I've got to say, it's definitely not the first time that's happened. I really felt like I was watching Schumacher in '94 and '95 again. Very similar sorts of movements in braking zones and things, really pushing things to the limit. I think really what Verstappen exposed most is that we don't have consistent rules of stewarding in a lot of these cases.
That's a big one.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
It's
for sure.
that's the thing that needs to change, but then when anything goes to the FIA level and how they enforce stuff, then it becomes politicized. I think that I agree with Martin Brundle. We have the technology right now to automate a lot of that and like get rid of the gray area, and it's baffling that F1 hasn't chosen to do that.
It's equally baffling that those data aren't used to improve the broadcast, though.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, why not show a graphic of, these were the lines all these drivers just took through this corner. This was their speed at each point in the corner. Oh, look, this driver was 2 kilometers per hour faster at the apex.
They did
this
some
driver
sort of
took a later.
Yeah.
That would be fascinating.
They
So
did.
that, this driver broke,
Yeah.
got on the brakes 2 meters later.
They did that like 3 times actually this season. They showed some sort of a graphic on, at least on the Sky broadcast, of like where people were braking. So they clearly have, and this was an FOM graphic. So they have the technology to do that. Yeah, why aren't they doing that for everything? Or well, not everything, but
there's so much you could do there, just to get people more engaged. Because especially if you're a new fan to the sport, all those subtleties just are not immediately obvious, right? You have to watch the sport for a long time to even pick up whether a driver's on a hot lap or not. Like, that's not immediately obvious to someone who just switches on the TV.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
the sport has...
Anyway, I'll stop ranting, but that's sort of a point I really would like to see addressed.
Absolutely.
No, I think it's valid. I feel like I can see those decimals of a second after years and years.
Yeah, only after years and years, and only after kind of people have pointed it out to you, or like you might get to like notice it. But yeah, if somebody was pointing it out to you, like, hey, listen, look at how he did this, look at where he braked, make him just more digestible for anybody. Yeah. Number 1 on the analysis and what got you the infamous tweet was obviously Fernando Alonso coming first with 7.92 PPR. The model figured out that, as far as we're concerned, the driver that really put it all out there, and if this was a stock series with everybody with the same car, we might have seen a championship won by a Fernando Alonso.
Yep.
Wait,
That's what it looks like.
I'm an Alonso fan, so I'm gonna remove myself from the conversation because anything that I say is completely. I have no way to hide it. It'll be completely biased. But yes, Alonso, best driver in the grid by far. Come on.
So
I think at this moment, I have to confess that I'm just an Alonso fanboy. That I built the model just to show that Alonso is the greatest driver of all time. It's been clear for a long time, and now I think it's undeniable.
Going by the method I keep mentioning, the unorthodox method of adding the 2 drivers for a team to get a individual score, I just want to point out McLaren comes first, Red Bull second, Ferrari, Mercedes, Toro Rosso, Manor with an asterisk. They would come in 6th.
Yep.
Williams, and then Force India, Renault, and Haas. Down and then Sauber.
Yeah, so that's sort of a good metric. What you're doing is basically telling you what's the sort of quality of the drivers of the team, basically, on average.
The driver in the team, yeah.
The drivers.
Yep.
Yeah.
If you run the model by
The driver
sort of doing the
team,
reverse,
yeah.
if you assume all the teams had equal drivers and sort of run the Constructors' Championship that way, I ended up with the following ordering. It was Mercedes in first, of course, Red Bull, Ferrari, Force India, so that all followed the Constructors' Championship, Williams. Then Haas, Renault, and then Toro Rosso and McLaren were about tied.
Ooh.
And then Sauber and Manor roughly tied.
Huh. Which is sort of where they, like, if you really think about it, that's sort of where they were. I mean, not by the numbers, but that's, if you think about it,
They're very close.
That's where they. What you think about it? There.
Yeah. We have a few questions from the chat. If we have time for that, that'd be.
Oh, actually, yeah, Andrew. Like we've taken up a whole chunk of your time. Are you cool with staying on for a little longer?
Yeah, sure. Let's chat a bit longer.
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, so we have one question from Byron. I know you talked about it earlier very slightly, but Byron asks, can I have your thoughts on the removal of the token system for next year?
I think it's a good thing.
Okay.
Because I think at this point Mercedes has kind of a cemented advantage. And the best thing for the sport is probably to allow Ferrari and Renault and Honda especially to make some inroads.
Yeah.
It would be bad for costs, but I'm not even sure I buy that argument because the manufacturers are still spending. They're just spending within this bizarre constraint.
Yeah. No, it was completely ridiculous. It was brought in to rein in the cost, and if anything, it did zero for that. People were just spending their money elsewhere, like you said. Do we have any other facts?
Yeah, I just got one more. This is from Leston Davis. My question is about the progress of integrating age and experience into the model. It sounds like it could be a great improvement, almost a definitive model when compared to the others.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's really where these models need to go next. So I did a post earlier this year, sort of summarizing the 3 models that exist, one of which is mine, another which was published this year, and another which was published a few years back. And, you know, the models agree in certain cases and disagree in others, which is interesting in its own right. But sort of the fact that all of the models that are missing at the moment is the effects of age and experience. When I do sort of look at the data after having fit the model, it's clear the drivers on average perform much worse in their rookie year and a little bit worse in their second year than they do in later years of their career. And also, as you'd expect, there's something of an age trend. So drivers tend to be around their peak from something like 25 to 35 years old, with, you know, tailing off at either end. And currently the model isn't considering that. And I think that's really important in terms of some of the all-time rankings. Because for instance, Nico Rosberg, when he faced Michael Schumacher at Mercedes from 2010 to 12.
Oh, he was
ahead. And the question is how much of that was down to Schumacher's age, the fact that he had, you know, a few years off as well. So those are the factors I'm adding to the model at the moment. I'm looking at a slightly different structure at the moment, a mixed effects model, it's called, where I take into account the effects both of how much experience the driver has, what age they are currently, and I'm also trying to look at what happens if a driver is away and then comes back, because it looks to me as though that also has a significant effect. It's just a question of how all these factors fit together. Because if I look at the age curve just for young drivers, just for drivers who started the sport early versus the age curve for drivers who started the sport late, like in their late 20s or later, the age curve is actually quite different. Drivers who start young tend to peak earlier and also tend to decline earlier, which is kind of counterintuitive, this early decline. So, potentially these factors relate to one another. And one of the sort of greatest challenges actually is how do you treat 1950? Because technically all the drivers in 1950 were rookies in the Formula One World Drivers' Championship because it didn't exist before then. But, of course, many of them were racing in Grand Prix from the 20s or the 30s. You know, they had a lot of experience before. And then many of them had a big gap across World War II. So, in terms of how you actually model this consistently across all the eras is sort of the challenging point. But, yeah, I'm working on it. I'm hoping that will be finished this year.
Cool.
Awesome.
And I've got one more question. It's sort of like a question of mine, too.
Sure.
Another one from Byron is like, he says, who would you like to see in the second Merc seat?
Oh, man, that's what, I was going to get into that, man. I was getting into that.
So, yeah, how does Bottas fit into that?
And how about a follow-up question to that? I mean, please answer that, but a follow-up question to that would be mine, and I'll tack it on. How brilliant would it be to see Alonso and Hamilton, and who would win? Just from pure passion, perspective. Come on,
the numbers.
That one would be amazing. I think it could clearly go either way. Ricardo would be another one I'd really like to see.
Yeah.
Because he's sort of consistently, he's sort of in the top three and not. Because the sort of canonical top three is Alonso, Hamilton, Vettel, which is partly based on championships.
Yeah.
But then there's sort of the caveat that Ricardo a lot of the time looks just as good and beat Vettel the one time they faced each other. Yeah. So is he more rightfully in the top three? I don't know. It'd be great to see him against one of those other drivers, either Hamilton or Alonso. And I think stylistically it'd be super interesting to see him against Hamilton because they're both sort of very late breakers, very, very aggressive in their racecraft, very incisive. I think that'd be an amazing matchup.
Nice.
God damn.
Can we pull up that link?
Unfortunately, we're not going to see that. So thank you.
Yeah, no, it's too bad. So, what link do you have? I got something like just off of F1, or sort of.
That's just what we're still talking about.
Okay, all right.
There you go. Just because we were just talking about this, but it's fairly obvious this is the dude. It's Bottas. You can see it.
So it's not official yet, though, right?
No, it's not. They're really, really waiting until the last second. Come on.
I just took this off Reddit. Somebody put something about his patience.
He's gotta
I'm
be
gonna
very
start
bullish.
calling him Valtteri Robotas.
Okay,
That's his new name.
can I just like pull it outside of F1 for just 1 second? And really not I'm not trying to like hog your time here, Andrew, but in your research right now, like you are Dr. Phillips for a reason. You spend your day job. You are a researcher of some sort. I'm assuming because you're a PhD. And I was looking through the stuff that you're doing now, and I don't know if this is exactly what you're doing now, but you're working on sleep patterns.
Yep, largely. I study sleep and circadian rhythms using mathematical modeling.
That's amazing because earlier in the year, one Danny and me and Mike, we were talking in our podcast about how Lewis apparently got this guy to train him around how to best focus his sleep pattern to be able to get the most out of each Grand Prix weekend, since they're just jumping back and forth through time zones and whatever, and like you know what I mean. Like, do you have any insight on that? Like, in terms of what you research? Obviously, I don't know anything about what you're actually studying.
Yeah,
But
so actually, some of the people I've worked alongside have developed methods for optimizing how you should schedule your sleep and your light patterns to transition across a time zone most quickly. So that I would say has obvious applications in Formula One,
absolutely,
for personnel and for drivers who want to sort of transition, because they are constantly jumping between time zones. I'm not sure that all drivers are necessarily taking advantage of that kind of thing. It certainly sounds from some tweets and things like they're not.
If you were, I mean, knowing what you know, if you were either an F1 driver or if you were somebody that an F1 driver was, you were advising an F1 driver, like what, like how would you play it? Like just out of curiosity, from what you know, like let's say somebody that's an F1 driver and you have this great advice for them in terms of their sleeping. Like, what would you tell them to do?
Well, ideally what you do, especially with respect to jet lag, is you take into account all of the existing commitments they have, things that can't be moved, and then you'd schedule around that. So basically you'd have certain constraints on your model, and then you'd figure out what's the optimal light pattern. It's basically a control theory problem that would then shift them most quickly. But yeah, I mean, even without a mathematical model, you can provide sort of basic advice on what light is going to do to you at different times of day, how sleep should be structured, what is a good duration of sleep, what is your current level of sleep debt. So that's one area in which I work, is modeling the effects of sleep debt on cognitive performance.
Cool.
And that's definitely going to be something big in Formula One, because we know, it's such fine margins between the top drivers. Something as little as an hour or two extra of sleep, could really translate on the track. Like, we know if you lose sort of half a night of sleep, you're sort of performing at a level as though you're at a fairly high blood alcohol concentration. If you're awake for a full 24 hours, you're actually performing as though you're at about 0.08. It's around the legal limit for driving in the US.
Wow.
We know that has a huge huge effect on performance, right? Like, no driver would turn up to a Formula One race drunk.
No.
Not even James Hunt. Like, James Hunt would always abstain from alcohol.
Well, that's why he
in the
puked
week
before
of the
each
Grand
race.
Prix.
Yeah.
Maybe a cigarette.
Yeah, he might
or
have been
two.
using other things, enhancers potentially. But the idea of using alcohol at a Grand Prix would just be crazy. Whereas I'm not sure sleep is taken quite as seriously, but we know the sort of performance decrements are similar. I was only half joking when I said, Raikkonen might be getting better sleep now that his kid's a little older.
But it's true, and it helps. So, and you said something about light. Like, light is important, and
absolutely. So the body's circadian clock is most responsive to light. So in terms of getting it to transition to a new time zone, so that it's aligned with where you would like it to be. So you're sleeping at the right time and you're alert at the right time of day. Getting it shifted using light is the most effective method. And light at certain times of day will either help or hinder you.
Oh wow! Now actually, just another to that, because I saw it on the other day. I like most people, like a lot of people, I do my stuff during the day, and then it's not only till like when I'm actually lying in bed, like that I have a little bit of brain left over, that I go on Reddit, I open up Reddit and I start scrolling through that, And at that time, and then it's on Reddit actually. Then I saw that it's actually it can really throw your entire situation off if you're like all of a sudden exposing yourself to all of that light. And somebody suggested that what you're supposed to do is get this app that cuts out everything but the blue light or something like that.
Yeah, screen filter on my phone.
Yeah, that is definitely beneficial.
Absolutely.
F-Lux is the program for computers.
F-Lux.
Yeah, because the circadian clock is very responsive to blue light, particularly.
Oh, interesting.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
There you go.
I think it actually affects your near sight too, doesn't it? Your nearsightedness.
What does?
Over time, it
yeah,
affects your
looking at a
nearsightedness.
screen?
The blue light.
Yeah, that probably won't help.
We got one more question. It's just from Reddit. When will our Formula One be looking for a new mod to join the team? This is from Byron.
Actually, just be as an introduction to that. If everybody that's listening doesn't know, Andrew, you are a
This man is
moderator
your boss.
of
your boss.
the Formula One subreddit. On top of everything else that you do, miraculously, you have time to do that. Honestly, like any. Yeah, well, let's start with that question. So yeah, as a mod,
Yeah, we are actually discussing that at the moment. So there may be a call for mods coming up.
There you go, Byron.
cool.
Put your application in.
Start cozying up to the mods. The community itself, just I guess, I mean, geez, like let's not take more of your time, but as a last question, the community itself as a whole has been growing, like it has skyrocketed. I've seen
it's been fantastic. It's gotten very big. It was a big part of getting me sort of more engaged with Formula One again and talking with other people. Certainly when I was sort of first watching Formula One, there was nothing like that. You know, you'd watch the race with some friends or family, and you know, now and then you'd see a Formula One fan and have some brief conversation, and that was
Oh my God, you're into Formula One? I didn't even know.
Right.
Yeah.
So to have an actual hub like that is really cool, and it is definitely growing. And now we've got 2 Formula One teams on there as well, which is pretty neat.
Oh yeah, Sauber and who else again?
Renault
And Force India.
Force India, nice.
Fourth India,
yeah. So and I'm sure it's been like a great experience, like lots of good stuff. After the 100,000 members, like since then it was like it just kept going and going. And what is it at now? 130, 40, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. And I think Verstappen's helped a lot this year, actually.
There's
a lot of
Younger
race
fans.
highlights.
Us too, man. Like all of a sudden, viewership from the Netherlands. Hey, Dutch people, people. Oh man, good stuff.
Definitely getting a lot more hits from the Netherlands these days than I used to on F1Metrics.
Yeah, you noticed it too.
Yeah, definitely.
I guess on that, thank you. First of all,
thank you for your time,
and
thank you for being so dedicated to this data. It's amazing,
and for all the work that you do on F1Metrics, your own research, I'm sure, and moderating the F1 community. Great job.
Oh well, yeah. Thanks for running the podcast. It's a lot of fun.
And I guess can we say it's fair that we'll do another one of these later on?
Absolutely.
A mid-season review.
Post-season review? As time allows, of course. And obviously, when you introduce your new model, we'd love to hear all about it.
Yeah, that would be great.
Also, slight hint here, Flato Fever is looking at introducing its own model. Perhaps we could...
we'll run it by you.
Perhaps we could recruit you for some sort of look over.
Let's
sort of review.
We'll talk.
Can,
all right.
Discuss its integrity. I'm not sure.
Dr. Andrew Phillips, F1Metrics.
You what the fat?
F1 statistician extraordinaire. Great contributor to the community.
PhD,
honestly, we couldn't thank you enough.
Australian.
And above all in my books, Alonso fan.
Thank you. Fan. Born an Alonso fan.
All
right.
Thank you so much, man. Take care.
Cheers.
Take care.
Cheers.
Cut him off.
So did you guys know? Did you guys know that yesterday was Lewis Hamilton's birthday?
Oh yeah, I heard that. Hang on a second. I gotta.
He's 32 years old, guys. He's 32 years old.
I just want to give a little shout out to everyone who was in the chat today. We had 15, 20 people constantly on the stream, and you guys were super, super cool and asking so many questions.
Thanks to Dr. Phillips.
Yeah. What a
Thank
cool
you to
fucking dude.
So we had some track news here.
Ooh.
We're gonna do some little roundup. So remember we talked 2-3 weeks ago. Singapore said,
Maybe.
Malaysia is kind of backing out. They seem like maybe they just want to host the MotoGP. Asia's maybe not the place for F1 anymore. Singapore's got what we want out of the race. Maybe we won't have it anymore. But it looks like so. And I said this last week that it's kind of interesting that magazines and newspapers like the New York Times, Business Insider, Forbes, etc., Reuters are posting F1 articles now. So they posted they posted this one that they've conducted a survey, and the residents of Singapore still want the race to continue.
Oh, really? Considering how loud it is.
Considering how loud it is, etc., it's one of the most badass ones, though.
It is really, really cool. I always remember that video on YouTube where it's like this guy. It's like, I came to Singapore and look at this fucking shit. Opens up his window. It's like cars screaming. Poor guy, man. I had no idea what was happening.
Remember the other one where the guy ran across the track and then he went to jail for half a year?
Oh man.
Other track news: Hungary, the Hungaroring.
On the spotlight for what?
For
not happening, probably.
No, they are definitely happening. So so what they want to do is resurface the circuit and do some renovations.
We know a guy, Gino Cifelli.
Drono circuit design. They want to do some MotoGP renovations to host that race.
So yeah, okay, fine, Gino Cifelli.
But they're saying that will not happen unless there is government support, which they think there is.
Okay.
But if you remember though, before this season's race, there was some redesign of the circuit, and the whole thing was resurfaced. The first time since we were born, 1986.
Yeah. And
they recurbed the chicanes. This is what I remember. We had a debate about it, but it was kind of shitty that those last two chicane complexes were like high curbs. They're like 4, 5, 6 inches, where like you couldn't actually drive the curb over them.
Yeah.
And they just flattened them out like a modern F1 circuit.
Completely wrong idea. But that's because the FIA has this push to standardize all the curbs throughout all the racing series or whatever, something.
Yeah, basically, so that they could hold essentially any series at any circuit. That's their idea in the end, but like who knows. But one thing that's interesting, because as well, we've been talking about Liberty now is taking over Formula One, and they might want to strengthen, they might want to weaken the European leg of the Formula One circuit.
Well, I mean, in a statement that they actually came out and pulled out and said, they
want to strengthen the classic races.
Yes, right. They say that they acknowledge the need for the classic races.
Right.
And even if that means that they're gonna keep the good ones, have a French Grand Prix, have an Italian Grand Prix, have a British Grand Prix, have a German Grand Prix. I mean, just
Germans.
I guess we're running out of
I'll get to the next one in a second. But so for Hungary, don't forget this year they resurfaced the circuit, most of it, recurbed a bunch of the chicanes, which gave everyone a sad face because they became less dangerous, less scary, less intimidating, less fun to race on. But we can't forget that they have a contract now until 2026. So last year, I think it was, or the year before, they signed something like a 9 or 10 year contract, which, with the Liberty stuff we just discussed last week, strengthening some, weakening certain European races, Hungary is safe. Hungary is safe until 2026 if they want to be, etc. But
you can almost call them a classic European race by now, pretty much.
Yeah, since '86 they've been running 20 years. This was the 20th running this past year. But okay, so before I get to the biggest news, Monaco, next circuit news, will be the first time free to air in something like almost a decade. So it'll be on Channel 4.
Oh yeah.
In Europe,
Well,
mostly in
Britain.
Britain, I guess. The Monaco Grand Prix will be free to air for the first time in about a decade.
Well, I mean, not really about a decade because it was on the BBC before when the BBC.
It was in the BBC, but okay, so
Maybe
it's been 2
across
years.
Europe.
Yeah. So, but again, it's another weird one. That Channel 4 only took over that BBC contract until the end of 2018. So in 2019, in Britain at least, and as well in Germany and Italy, the only way to watch Formula One will be through pay TV through Sky.
Brilliant.
It's kind of shitty.
Yeah.
And Silverstone,
But that's gonna come back and bite him in the ass. Honestly, let's be honest.
yeah, absolutely. And Silverstone, we've been talking about this race all season.
Yeah, so that's
the news has flipped back and forth and back and forth.
So now it's back in the red, right? Like now we're talking about might, possibly, will not happen this year though, but not next year, and not forevermore.
So, if y'all remember, like about 4 months ago, the BRDC, the British Racing Drivers
Association or whatever commission,
association, whatever, who owns the Silverstone circuit and administrate it, along with, don't forget, it's important, they owned it and administrate it along with Porsche. So there cannot be a sale, there cannot be a transferring of administration rights without the consent and the approval and the agreement of Porsche, who uses that circuit, who have leased it, who have bought a part of that circuit for testing their vehicles. They use it for whatever, stress testing, performance testing, whatever Porsche's. In 2009, Silverstone and the BRDC signed a 17-year deal to host the Grand Prix of Britain, the British Grand Prix. A 17-year deal. That was in 2009, with a clause that in 2009 they could break the agreement. After 10 years, they could break the agreement with the signed agreement sent in by 2017. So in the 8th,
so that's this year.
So yes, in the 8th year, there was the option for the BRDC to cancel this Silverstone British Grand Prix for 2019 in 2017. So that's why we mentioned 2 weeks ago that the Silverstone Grand Prix is safe at least until 2019, which it is. But we also said last week that Bernie has been making some phone calls.
Well, listen,
the Rockford circuit, Brands Hatch, and Donington circuit are all 3 potential Grade 1 circuits with minimal upgrades and facilities enhancements.
Well, it's all
could host the Formula 1 Grand Prix.
Technically, but it's all bullshit. It's all just Bernie, like, obviously, like, cranking the heat.
Brands Hatch hosted it until the late 80s, and they have the runoffs there. Donington, just before Silverstone signed this, was going to host it for about a decade, but they ran out of money at the last minute to get the final upgrades completed.
It doesn't matter. You know what Bernie wants? Bernie wants a race in and around London.
In Britain. Yeah. Well, in Britain, around London.
Yeah.
Bernie's quote was that nothing to worry about. There will be a British race. And I'm saying especially with the Grand Prix being finalized, which we told you about that 2 weeks ago. The French Grand Prix has been finalized. It will be happening for a five-year contract.
Jesus Christ! If the French have a Grand Prix and the British don't, it'll be riot potential.
It can't happen.
We're talking about
the British Grand Prix.
It will be bigger than Brexit.
Right, but so the chairman of the BRDC, the chairman of the BRDC who runs Silverstone.
Yeah.
Who runs the administration of Silverstone at least, wrote a letter to the FOM, I guess. His name is John Grant. that said, we've spent what Bernie wanted. We built.
Yeah.
They built that. They redesigned the circuit. They moved the front straight, the pit straight,
Around.
over to the back where the back straight used to be, and built that wing.
A whole complex.
The wing complex, whatever it's called, the aerodynamic building that was supposed to be, and they agreed. This is the main problem, is that in 2009 on a 17-year deal, they signed. It's got to be some sort of collusion, whatever, with Bernie. A 5% escalator clause into the agreement to host a race.
Yeah.
So that every year they will pay 5% more.
Retarded. It's ridiculous.
Add
It's
five.
completely unsustainable.
Add 5 plus 5% plus 5%, and do that 17 times, 17 iterations of 5%. You're playing triple or quadruple what you started with.
Well, it's especially in like real term money. What happened back then? And this is
yeah, with the real,
No.
on top of adding inflation, adding the Brexit, adding oh my God, the Middle Eastern wars.
Well, what happened is that, and this is something that Ross Brun almost touched on. I mean, just in general ways in his book, is that when all these long-term deals, especially the really ridiculous ones, like this is a ridiculous deal,
17-year deal
at 5% each. So when all these ridiculous deals were signed, the world was a different place. Into Formula One, we had all kinds of money from manufacturers coming. There were 7 manufacturers in F1, including Toyota, which was back then the biggest car company. Remember that? Biggest car company in the world, whatever. Lots of money. There was no end to the money that was coming to the sport. So back then it seemed feasible. All right, 5% each year for 17 years. Why not? It's not. It's not anymore, and so it hasn't been for a while. And that's so now they have to face the facts. And this is part of what's driving a lot of those, circuits not being able to pay and not being able to honor the commitments. The commitments is because of this. Absolutely. It is a bit ridiculous. And it's ridiculous.
It's insane.
Well, man, if we look at and I hate well, I don't hate, but I don't always like to bring stuff from Joe Sayward, because Joe Sayward, he has his own deal going on. He's a bit biased as well. But he did bring up a point, is that if you wanted to be straight down to the rules, the FIA, as per their rule book that everybody signed, they have these deadlines where the tracks that are going to be available, or whatever, like the race calendar needs to be finalized by a certain date. The entry from every team that's going to be competing in next year's championship needs to be finalized by a certain date. All of this stuff has been broken. Like nobody's paying attention to those deadlines anymore. Nobody. Yeah. Like seriously. So in that part of it, it's all a bit of a joke, and because they've let it slide so far, like some people are definitely going to take it to the wire, and we're going to see that those races that have an asterisk beside them, even for this year, like we might get some kind of crazy stories that saying that such and such Grand Prix might be canceled halfway through the year. Who knows, man?
It's possible.
Yeah.
I don't think.
Yeah, I don't want to fear monger like that, but come on.
It is possible for sure.
Anyway,
that's all I got for this week.
Man, I think that's
the extent of my news.
I had a couple of little nonsense stuff, but we can save that for next week. Now, if you think of weeks starting from Sunday to Saturday, we'll leave it for next week.
Okay.
That meaning we're not gonna put another podcast on Tuesday, as much as we would love to, but
there's just not enough.
Yeah.
Shit going on.
Yeah. Well, or time in our days.
Yeah.
But
there's not enough going on. But
we'll
be back in 8 days to 9 days.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
But we'll be here.
Not hopefully, but
we'll be here next week.
Monday or Tuesday next week.
All right, DJ, you can play us out. Actually, and by the way, Good show. You guys had a great show.
Thanks, man. That was a huge show for us.
Opening, like you guys were headlining the legendary Horseshoe Tavern.
Yo,
in
Kiefer
Toronto.
Sutherland came to see you guys.
Kiefer Sutherland was
Sutherland
at the
was there.
show.
See you guys play your band show.
If anybody doesn't know, and if you're curious, we're gonna play a song right now. This is our intro and outro for every episode. That's actually Mike's band. That's Mike on the bass. Their band is called Bamboo. If you want to listen to their stuff, it's very simple. Listen to bamboo.com.
Rolls off the tongue.
Alrighty, buddy.
All right, guys. We'll see you in about a week, guys. Thank you very much to Andrew for coming on, and thanks for all the new subscribers that we got today.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys.